In the pursuit of learning and unlearning, today we are joined by Prof Mbhele, and your host is Umlamulo Mkwanazi. We've seen so many things, people using excessive substances, and we normally judge them without understanding or wanting to see what is it that might have caused that. So we've invited Prof Mbhele from psychology to try and understand what are these childhood traumas that we assume could be affecting abantu to be acting in different ways that they act. Ma'am, asikwamukele
Yebo,
njani?
ngiyaphila.
Yebo. Ncama ngicela ukhululeke nje usekhaya. Ushilo ukuthi awukhululekile kakhulu ngalento. Kodwa ngizocela nje siyixoxe bengathi se-officeini lakho and be comfortable because we believe that this topic is something that we normally do not discuss. But into eyenzekala kubantu esihlala nabo abanye sibabona emgwaqeni. But for us we just judge ukuthi hey ubani isidakwa ubani uthanda amadoda zonke lezo zinto. So we want to know what could be the cause. We know that there are traumas abantu abaphila now. Yes, mhlawumbe umama before singene on that topic engasichazela ukuthi ubani.
As you have said, I always, introduce myself as Buyi Mbhele.
Yes. And not use
Rather than Prof. I know at university we must use the titles, but
Yes.
I'm teaching at Department of Psychology. I'm a psychologist registered with the Professional Board of Psychology as an educational psychologist.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yes. And how long does it take for one person to become a psychologist? Because the other day we're joined by Casey, and there's a lady who was graduating with a psychology degree. So, and her dream was to become a psychologist.
Yes, training, it depends. There are psychologists who pursue the academic routes. In other words, they don't become psychological practitioners. What do I mean by that? They do not see clients
Yes.
or for therapy or other. But then if you want to see clients for therapy, then you can either be a counseling psychologist, a clinical psychologist, or an educational psychologist. But we also have research psychologists. They are also involved in more in testing, psychological assessments, and obviously research. So to become a clinical psychologist, counseling, or educational, they all take the same amount of time. You first do your first, it depends on the institution where you trained, but in South Africa, you first do your first degree, which is usually a 3-year degree. But there's also a 4-year degree.
Okay.
We used to have Psych, which we call Bachelor of Psychology. After that 4 years, you can be admitted into a master's program. But if you have done a 3-year degree, then it means you have to do an honors.
Okay.
And then after an honors, then you can register for a master's. And then master's is 1 year academic, including research, which we call mini dissertation. And then during your master's year, you also have practicum. As early as the beginning, once you have registered with the board, you start seeing clients, but that is practical because you are being supervised. So students are usually placed in different places depending on the training program. Like for example, if you want to be in educational psychology, you'll be placed in areas where you will have experiences of what educational psychologists do, like for example, in a school. Nowadays, we have schools, what is this term? Which attend to all learners. It's one school inclusive. I think it's inclusive education, that is the name they use. But previously, during our times, we used to go to certain schools where they admit learners with learning difficulties, things like attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, reading disorders. There are so many.
Yes.
Yeah, so you are placed during that year, and then afterwards you get an internship. So during your master's program, your 1-year master's program,
So sorry not to disturb you. So how many years this
basically, yeah. Basically, it's about 6 years. I mean, it's almost the same as
Up to
medicine.
masters.
Yeah, because it's your 3-year degree. That's 3 years, and then
Okay.
you add your honors, and then your 5th year is your master's year, and your 6th year is your internship.
How long?
If you're gonna be a clinical psychologist, then you also have to do community service, which is the 7th year. But after the internship, you can register with the board as a clinical psychologist. But this 7th year, I think it's what the government introduced to alleviate, because, you know, once people graduate, they usually don't go to all the other areas. They are concentrated, usually mostly in urban areas. So the government just allocate them to places where they are needed most.
So how many years did it take you to become a professor?
Professorship, you know, it doesn't have to take so many years. It depends upon what are the things that you have achieved as you are working in an academic institution.
Okay.
I don't know whether should I say it's a disadvantage, because you can only get the title if you are in an academic institutions.
Okay.
There are people who are very good in practice, and they are working out, they're helping communities, doing great things, but they cannot be called professors because it's an academic title.
Okay.
They remain doctors if they want to study. If they don't study further and get a PhD degree, then they would just be psychologists without without the doctoral title, no matter how much contribution, unless, of course, if they get an honorary doctorate.
Hey, there's honoraries that we've
You
been
see?
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in your experience and in your academic life, what has been the ups and downs of becoming a professor? In fact, all your academic life, what has been happening? What has been your challenges?
I don't know. I think the challenge is general in most institutions, always resources.
Financial resources.
All the resources, financial, material, human resources. Like shortage of staff, basically.
Okay. Now, meaning for an individual, as in, I want to pursue a master's, PhD, up to professorship. So, what would be the challenge? Would it be the financial resources in conducting my research?
Of course you will, but in terms of postgraduate research, it's easier now. It's much easier than during the times when we studied. If you look at me, then you'd know. It's much easier because the NRF has made funds available in all. You know, a student can apply on his own as long as his project has been approved in that particular institution where he wants to study. Even starting at honors level, they can apply for NRF and then they get funding. But then the university institutions, they've got funding. And then even in the departments, if I'm a professor and I want to do a project, I can apply for funding, and then I can include my student. So nowadays, it's much easier if you are in an academic institution. But even if you are not, as long as your project has been approved where you have applied for it, you can apply through NRF or even through university and get funding. There are so many funding, should I say, codes, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the importance of mental health?
Wow.
I assume
You shouldn't be asking that question.
we need to go through that.
You know, we always pride ourselves by saying you can be anything. You can be a billionaire, you can be anything. But if you are not good mentally, it's all in vain. What do you do?
But how does
So mental health is so important, but it's an area, I don't know. It's an area that is overlooked, or people don't, you know, let me give you an example. If somebody says, I was just watching TV, not that I watch TV all the time, but there is this soapy when the man,
Yes.
there's a husband and a wife. When the man comes home, he finds the wife sitting with a therapist, with a psychologist. They are waiting
their
for,
home?
Yeah, in their
Okay.
home. They are waiting for him to come home. Obviously, they've been having problems. And then the man comes, and then, he becomes polite, he smiles. Have we met each other? I don't know you. And then the wife introduces her and says, he's a therapist. It changes. He changes.
It's an ambush. I
He
don't
said,
blame you.
yes, that's what he says. I'm being ambushed now. I don't need to discuss my problems with a stranger. And that's it. So he stays with his problems. And then when they try to talk to him, he says, no, let me go and drink, which is your topic.
Ah,
Let me just go and have a drink. And then he drowns himself in alcohol.
what are the things that we can mention and say these are the key things that show a person who has mental issues or who's been troubled or is dealing with trauma?
It depends. When you work with a person, usually in most cases, it's the people that are around that person that would see that there is something wrong. It may be, if it's a spouse, a partner, or even at work, somebody that you know, at work we usually know so and so is like this. You can see if somebody has changed. So the most important sign is the change in behavior, change in behavior. Sometimes you talk to a person, you find that he is not focused to what you are saying. His mind is elsewhere. I'm talking to you. What were you saying, Like he's lost, he's thinking about something else. You can see, and then usually in most cases you ask, what is wrong? There is nothing.
Okay. Focusing on the example that you had made from what you saw on TV, I want to focus on this. So if someone, for instance, males, because I'm comfortable talking about males because I'm a male. So let's say someone drinks a lot. For males, what is normally a dominant factor that is traumatic experiences?
Well, I can't say for males this is a dominant factor. It depends. For me, I would say it's an individual issue.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what type of a person are you? Are you sensitive? If somebody were to say this, how would you respond? And so I think it's personal more than generalizing and saying males usually do this. And usually you would understand and you would know the people that you live with or you work with, and you will know when something is wrong. It's easier for us because we are psychologists, but for an ordinary person who's not a psychologist, any change in behavior that you are used to, even if it's somebody, sometimes they say people, even if it's somebody that is labeled as a quiet person, somebody that doesn't talk much, but you will see when something is eating them. And the interesting part is that whenever you ask, what is wrong? Nothing.
They never say.
That's nothing also. But you can see it's changed. If he used to make jokes, he's no longer making jokes, or even if he laughs, he just laughs, sort of hiding something, in a manner that he's hiding something. And sometimes they don't want to be with company. They are on their own. They avoid people, if there is something bothering him.
People can be healed from trauma.
They can, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this job.
They can be healed from trauma.
Yes, they can. It depends what is it, but they can.
Okay. Because, so are there any institutions, say around KZN, that assist with that, where a person can go instead of being ambushed at home with a therapist? Are there any recognized institutions where a person can go and say, listen guys, I have a problem. When I was a child, I had this traumatic experience. What can you help me with?
No, they don't even say that. Well, if we go to childhood traumas, it's a whole, I don't want to go there, but people with traumas, or I would prefer to say issues, because when you think of trauma, some people think of
Death.
people that are, I don't know, devastated or, something bigger.
Yes.
But psychological problems, they start with something small, very small, it doesn't
Like?
have to be bigger. You know, like a person, let me mention the most common one, especially maybe because you're a young person in relationships. You know, when you are in a relationship with your girlfriend
Yes.
or boyfriend, you'd expect certain things to happen. And you haven't discussed with him or her,
You haven't communicated with the person you're in a relationship
oh, you're in a relationship with. And then all of a sudden, somewhere, I when we are you don't respect me. How? Sengenzeni manje? How can you do? You know, it's not like in a relationship you have to put rules. I mean, even that is boring to say, when I come in, you must do this. But you know, sometimes you find a person that keeps on looking and, you know, and all of a sudden it just bursts and say, "Ay, when you do this, you do this." I,
But those reactions come from somewhere. For instance,
yes.
let me say for males, let's say I grew up in an environment whereby when my mother, my father would come home, my mother would instantly stand up, prepare food for him. And then in my mind, as I'm looking for a partner, that is what I envision, that's what I create in my head. A female person is supposed to behave in this certain way.
But now, what happens if your partner is coming from an environment
Where
where
they
the
are-
father would say, "I namhlanje, everybody just relax. Go into the lounge and watch TV and do whatever, and leave me alone in the kitchen."
Okay.
Not because he's a chef. Of course, nowadays we've got a lot of black chefs, etc. But not because he's a chef. Because he's a father, he enjoys doing that for his family. He just out of the blue says, "Hey, Puman, today the kitchen is mine." You see, your partner may be coming from that environment, and you are coming from a different environment.
Yes, different.
And you haven't
backgrounds
negotiated all that. And she expects something from you, and you expect something.
from
Even that can cause, you know, misunderstanding. Normally, well, you would have your own friends before you go into a relationship. As you grow up, you've got friends.
your own background,
And
upbringing.
your partner will also have her own friends even before she meets you.
Yes.
And with their friends, maybe sometimes they have a routine to say every month end we must go out, or whatever routine they have. And probably you also have your own routine. Now you are together, and sometimes you tell your partner or you don't tell your partner, but you say, "Oh, I was with friends," you know. I was with friends. Like, from your side, you were not with another woman or whatever. It was honest friendship. But you have left her out. Now, when you come back and she says, especially if you are married, well, maybe if you are still dating, she might be at home doing something, but if you are married, you are sharing the place. Now, what do I do when you are away? But more even to say, what do I do? I don't know what has happened to you. Maybe you have been involved in an accident, maybe where you are, you can't reach me, etc. Now I'm worried sick. I don't know what happened to you. You haven't reported. By the time you come back, you are so happy. You are so happy, you've had such a good time. And I've been building up with all this, thinking, what has happened to so and so? It's unlike him. And now what do we do? Then it starts. So it's simple things. And then it carries on and on, unless, of course, you have to sort it out there and there. And that is communication.
Okay. So would you
It's
say
not like you have to come with a Bible and say, now when you do, I mean, you'll obviously forget.
yes?
But when it happens, then again you should apologize. I was with friends. Why are you so worried? Do you no,
Insecurities.
yeah, sometimes people say that. But she didn't know, and it wasn't even that maybe she's insecure. It was just not knowing where you are, whether you are safe. I'm safe. What? Who can do what to me? You know, anything happens on the road if you are driving, or you know, there are lots of things out there. So,
What would you recommend as a way or an efficient and effective way to try and cure a person with trauma? Would it be to do something on my own, like reading books, or going to ehlathini ngiyomemeza khona and cry, or would it be to try and speak to someone, a professional?
Yes, maybe I should start there because that was the original question. Are there institutions?
Yes.
If it is severe trauma or severe mental illness, there are institutions, but when you go to those institutions, in most cases you are usually diagnosed with a particular condition, you know. So you can go there and then you can be treated where you will get your medication if it requires medication, but then you can also get counseling. But for other, we usually refer to daily problems, you know, problems of daily living where you misunderstand. But, you know, that's the issue. Simple things that can be easily resolved, they usually build up to big things because they were not attended to at the time. Then you can go for counseling. Okay, I'm aware that psychologists are very few in South Africa compared to the number of people, you know, like how many million and how many psychologists are out there. You see, and obviously psychological for those in private practice is a bit expensive for most people. And if you go to hospitals, they are overloaded and, you know, there are a lot of things. But even just to have somebody that is not your friend of yours or the friend of your partner, but somebody that you can trust, just to iron out those minor issues. Because when you quarrel, the person will say, on such and such a day, you did this, on such and such, and then
Never
they've got the
mentioned
whole
it
list.
instantly,
They,
and then
they,
you've created
they
a
even
list.
remember the date to say, oh, on this date, you know, I've sat with clients who will come to me, and it's males.
It's males.
Males
Guys.
that will come to me, today is 2024, then you would say, on the 5th of December in 2021, you know, and I remember it was at 3, we were, you know, people are keeping diaries, I don't know, in their heads. So that is why I say if there is a person, because if it's your friend or your family, then maybe if they look at me as a person who needs to change certain things, I would say they are saying it because it's your family. And you would say, that is why I say it's a neutral person, but that you trust that can help. But then that person must also be honest and say, hey, this is beyond me. And then if it is beyond, then you can refer for psychological counseling. So when people come to you or when a person comes for psychological counseling, you do not just look, we always say when a person comes to you with a problem, it's a presenting problem. But it's not a psychological diagnosis. So even when we are teaching students, we say, people will come to you with presenting problems. He has a problem that is presenting just now. But in terms of your qualification and training, what is the psychological diagnosis? In other words, where does this come from? So there are a lot of things that you can do to check or to make a diagnosis. But as we are sitting here and talking and then you're listening to the story and it's telling you all those dates. So already because it's telling you the dates, you are already taking notes, even if you are not writing, to say, okay, he's a person who keeps everything that comes. Then you can come, well, maybe he will tell you about 6 dates or I don't know how many dates he will give you. And then you say, okay, on the 5th of December 2021, when this happened and you were doing ABCD, after that, okay, he's telling you the whole story, what he did, what she did, and all that. Then what happened? How did you resolve that? And you find that he or she didn't resolve it. They didn't as a couple. And then he's telling you the next date. Says, well, I just... Another person would, you know, the relationships, you young people with your phones. Says, I was looking at my phone, I could see his car going to this way, and the car changed. At 3, the car was there. They are checking it on the phone. Okay, you saw all that. What happened then? What did you do? Afterwards, when you came together now, what is it? Well, I asked him and he denied and whatever. And it ends there. But can you see now that it's building up. And then when it reaches the peak, because everybody says once the cup is full, you know.
Changing it and bringing it back to academics, would you say that the impact of education somehow affects how we make decisions and judge others? Because I personally think that each and every action a person does is actually a reaction from something. It's either because, let's say I receive 1,000,000 now, and the first thing that I do is not my decision. It's actually a reaction from something that I've always wanted to do. And I've always thought of wearing a Gucci, wearing a Versace, and I'm like, let me go and spend. So can we say that the level of education that a person has somehow affects how they make their decisions?
Like what? I mean, is it good or bad if you say it affects? In which way?
It depends on what you do. I think it will depend on what you do. The reactions that
The issue is more, for me, the issue would be more on the person's maturity. Another person may say it's personality, but, well, it depends really. We look at, when you're in therapy with people, you look at different angles. But for me, you will have your presenting problem. As you are relating your problem and telling me what is happening and all that, in my mind, I'm busy ticking the boxes or not ticking the boxes in terms of the level of maturity, you know? Which, in a way, sometimes other people refer to as development. How developed are you, you know? You may be adult, but not yet fully matured, you know? Your level of thinking, your spirituality, a number of other things. Like, for example, if you're wearing expensive clothes, what does it say to you? You know,
Yes.
what is it? Obviously, there is some satisfaction that you would get, but what is it that is lacking or the gap that is closing? So, how mature? You wouldn't even say that the person is not matured, because we grow throughout our lives until we die. But at what stage of development? And then, as a therapist, I need to check that stage of development. Obviously, I would compare with what is needed. Remember now, there are different, should I say, phases in life or things. Like, you need to be physically safe or intact or healthy. You need to look after your physical needs. You need to look after your social needs, your image, your belonging, your all those. But you also need your spiritual growth, your development, your whatever. And then, mind, body, in terms of the mind. You know, the debate in psychology has always been the mind, body, and the spirit, or some people, they call it the soul or the spirit, which is actually a higher level of development, obviously. When you are thinking about those issues, it's not just church going. You know, again, I was listening to the radio. You can see, listen a lot. I was listening to a radio and somebody was saying, on Sunday we used to go to church with my family. We dress nicely with my children and my husband. We were happy. We'll go to church and come back. And that was it, you know. Like, sort of like it was a routine that we go to church. For her, the way she was putting it, it's not like she was gaining anything. It was just something that she was doing because she's used to do it.
Okay.
But now when you go to church, that's another person now. And that is that person now as she is recalling that we used to do this, but we're just doing it for show. Well, not for show, but it's like a club. You belong to a club. But now she's doing it differently. Obviously, some people would say, "Ngoba sengamukela uJesu, nan." But there is a change in terms of maturity to say, now, why do you even start going to church? What does church teach you? Do you
Sense of belonging, maybe.
Do you go according to what? What does it mean to you?
I think last question. Well, can you recommend 3 books that may assist with the way that people think, or that may help them with their decision making?
Oh, there is one. Actually, there is lots. But the one book, that is the interesting part, because some of these books are not written by, I don't know, they're not written by people who are psychologists per se. Some of them are philosophers. Some, of course, they are psychologists, but some. But the one that, especially, I like it because it's easier.
Okay.
It's written by John Kehoe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing him correctly. Kehoe, Kehoe.
Okay.
Yes.
KEO, okay.
Yeah, I think it says The Mind Power.
The Mind Power.
Yeah. And some of the books, they're mostly talking, I think nowadays, which is the route that all, I think psychologists should go, is positive thinking.
Positive thinking.
Yeah, that mind power is telling you to say, if you can focus your mind on what you want, obviously, we hope that you would want something good. But even if you focus on something bad, anything that you want, whether it's wealth, whether it's success, whether it's what, but if you can focus your mind, people
You'll be
go
able to get what you
around,
want.
say, oh, is this, I don't get. So I wouldn't say that my mind is more focused than any other person, but it makes your life to be comfortable. To say, when people are threatened, hey, this is going to happen, we're not going to have this. But not that because you have certain things, but you know that no, it's not going to happen to me.
Yes.
Because you are working on your mind, constantly working on your mind. And the other one, I'm sure you know this guy, because I think nowadays he's working with Oprah, he's doing meditations, he's doing all those things, is Deepak Chopra.
Never heard of him.
He's got a number of books, but I think now he's going more commercial. But some of his earlier books, are more focused. I think he says Ageless Body, or I'm trying to think of the title, but he's talking about. But the point he's making is that all parts of our bodies, everything is constantly being renewed. I think it has got to do with, what is it? Should I say atomic energies or whatever, those things. But it's a very interesting one, and obviously, if you read, that one is more academic, but it can help, which I'll recommend Trish. She talks about holistic counseling, but you are not a counselor. But the interesting part of that book, all these they talk about positive thinking.
Okay.
The interesting part of that book, she talks about, if she gives an example of, it's not about, the whole book is not about that. It's about different layers of thinking. But what she's saying, if you've got 2 pot plants in your house, and this one you keep feeding positive things, you praise it, you say, oh, you're such a good plant, you're going to grow well, etc.
Something you should be doing with kids as well.
And this one, same in the same positions in the house or similar positions, and this one you feed it with bad things and say,
It's a useless plant.
Yes, yes. It doesn't grow. You see the difference. This one wilts or it dies, and this one grows and flourishes. So it's about positive thinking. I think what we need a lot, it is positive thinking that will help us.
We will keep that and we will take that and run with it. We'll keep positive thinking. Thank you very much, Prof. Mbhele, for spending a day with us. I know we somehow ambushed you, and I do apologize for that. And also like to thank Prof. Nicolaidas.
Nicolaidas.
Yes, I think he played a huge part in this happening. I was like, let's go to Prof. Mbhele. Thank you very much to him.
Okay.
In our closing, I think that what we'll take home is that in every situation, there's something positive to be learned. Whatever it is, just always try and find something positive about it. So going back to the scenario kababa ambushwe endlini kufika umakoti, I think in that situation, you feel uncomfortable talking about your issues with total strangers. It's fine. When you get there and then you're drinking that thing, just find a spot where you'll be able to speak to yourself and ask yourself, is this really how I want to be living my life? Is this how I see my life being in 5 years from now? How am I going to be dealing with? Is this the right way to be living? Is this the example that I want to set out to my kids, to everyone who's looking around me? So thank you very much. You can add more solutions on the comments, subscribe, share, and please like our content. We hope that will bring more solutions in terms of how to live a happy life, a positive life. Thank you very much.